London, 1882. The city breathed smog and secrets. It was in the cold shadow of Whitechapel, before Jack the Ripper would forever stain its alleys with infamy, that a different kind of evil festered. It wasn't fast. It didn't slash. It lingered. It seeped. It whispered promises in lace parlors and watched women unravel in silence. And in the middle of it all was Violet Gordon, a 25-year-old governess with sky-colored eyes and hands that shook only when she was alone. She had no idea she would become the first confirmed victim in a wave of arsenic murders that would ripple through London's East End for the next 5 years. Murders committed by a man who never left bruises, never drew blood, and always wore a bowler hat. This is her story. Violet Gordon lived on Narrow Street, a cobbled stretch between the Thames and a candle-making warehouse. It reeked of tallow and fish oil, but Violet didn't complain. She'd grown up in the industrial north and knew the smell of poverty intimately. She worked as a governess to the Aberlay family, a rising middle-class clan of bankers whose wealth came from transatlantic shipping. She taught Latin, embroidery, and moral behavior. Every Friday, she walked past the apothecary on her way to the lace parlor run by Mrs. Eliza Harlow, a widow with a crooked smile and a parrot that swore in 3 languages. It was at this lace parlor, under dim gaslights and thread-stiffened fingers, that Violet met Theodore Latch, a charming man with gold-rimmed glasses and a smell of sweet myrrh. He wasn't handsome in the usual way, but he was mesmerizing. A pharmacist's apprentice with a soft voice and a talent for remembering small details. He noticed a faint tremor in Violet's left hand. He asked nothing of it, just smiled and handed her tea. She drank it. It tasted metallic. That was the beginning. Over the next several weeks, Violet began to change. Her appetite waned. Her hands shook more. She grew pale and tired, her one straight back starting to curve like a willow in morning. She thought it was the dampness, or nerves, or loneliness. But Theodore kept showing up, always at the lace parlor, always with more tea. He told her stories about exotic compounds, plants that paralyzed, powders that could quiet an elephant. He said he dreamed of opening a proper apothecary, one that would heal women from the inside out. And Violet, perhaps out of longing, perhaps out of loneliness, believed him. On March 2nd, 1882, Violet collapsed during a lesson on Roman poetry. Her student screamed. The maid fetched water. A physician was called, Dr. Elliot Warnby, a man known for more mustache than insight, diagnosed female melancholy and possible uterine congestion, a popular Victorian euphemism for anything inconvenient. He prescribed rest and laudanum. But Violet didn't get better. She got worse. Her hair thinned. Her fingernails turned a pale blue. She began to vomit every few days. At first just in the morning, then increasingly throughout the day. Her bones ached and her gums bled when she brushed. Still, she refused to leave her post. "Work is the only thing keeping me upright," she told the cook one morning. But behind closed doors, she was falling apart. One person took notice, Clara Penrose, the youngest daughter of the Aberlays, a girl of 13 with a dangerous curiosity and a sharp intellect. She kept a journal. In it, she recorded the changes in Violet's condition. She also noted something else. The way Violet's symptoms always worsened after Theodore's visits. Clara watched. On March 12th, she followed Theodore after he left the parlor. He didn't go home. He walked to an alley behind the old docks and met a man dressed in black. They exchanged a parcel. Clara swore she saw small glass vials, just like the ones in her father's study. She wrote it all down, and then she told no one. Because on March 14th, Violet Gordon died. Her body was pale, bruiseless. No signs of trauma. The doctor cited exhaustion from feminine hysteria and signed the death certificate without so much as a blink. But Mrs. Harlow, the lace parlor owner, didn't believe it. She'd lost too many girls over the years, quietly, slowly, and all after meeting the wrong kind of man. So she called a friend, Dr. Alaric Dunstable, a rare physician who didn't laugh off female pain, examined Violet's body in secret. 3 days after burial, she'd been kept cold in the family's back cellar. What he found shocked him. Violet's organs were heavily laced with arsenic. Her stomach lining had nearly dissolved. Her liver bore the yellowish-green tint common in chronic poisoning. And her nails? striated with white. Meslines, a classic sign of slow arsenic exposure. Someone had been dosing her in minute quantities, day after day, long enough for her body to begin accepting it as routine. And then, with one final push, just a little too much, she died. Dr. Dunstable demanded an inquest. But by then, Theodore was gone. As word of Violet's poisoning spread through Narrow Street, women began whispering about other girls, other governesses and maids, who had died quietly in the past 2 years. Always pale, always weak, always too tired, always involved in some small way with a man named Theo or Theobald or Thomas, with different last names, always soft-spoken, always gone just before the body cooled. The newspapers called it the lace parlor phantom. But the police weren't interested. Arsenic was legal. Anyone could buy it. For rats, for hair tonics, for desperate housewives. There was no proof, no paper trail, until Clara Penrose came forward with her journal. And in it, she had drawn something damning. A sketch of the parcel, the vials, the alley, and most crucially, a distinct scar along Theodore's jawline she had glimpsed when he bent to kiss Violet's hand. Clara's father recognized the scar. He'd once seen it in an opium den in Limehouse, on a man who sold herbal aphrodisiacs to aging bankers. His name was not Theodore. It was Jonas Havelock, a disgraced chemist who had been banned from practicing medicine in 1878 after a series of suspicious patient deaths in Bath. He'd vanished after his trial, but now in 1882 he was back, and Violet Gordon was only the beginning. By the time Violet Gordon's lungs collapsed, Jonas Havelock was already halfway across London. He never ran. That was part of his power. He walked like a gentleman, slow, assured, his boots polished, his hat tilted with arrogant precision. A man with blood under his fingernails who always kept a clean collar. He left behind no bruises, only emptiness, only quiet girls in wooden boxes. He called them his phantoms. But now, someone had followed the trail. Clara Penrose's journal had turned whispers into a weapon. And for the first time in over a decade, Jonas Havelock was being hunted. The Limehouse district in 1882 was a stretch of London the city tried to forget. Filthy docks, opium dens lit with swinging red lanterns, and alleyways that devoured sound. It was here that Detective Inspector Samuel Merrick was sent. An aging inspector with burned scars on both hands and a hatred for silence. He wasn't sent by the police. Scotland Yard had declined the case. Too many suppositions, they said. No motive. No manhunt for an assumed ghost. No, he was sent by Mrs. Eliza Harlow and funded by Clara Penrose's father, who didn't want to explain to his dinner guests why a 13-year-old had sketched a murder. Merrick started with the name Jonas Havelock. He pulled what few court records survived the 1878 inquest in Bath. A disgraced chemist, accused of poisoning 2 patients and sedating a third, cleared due to insufficient evidence. Reputation destroyed, disappeared. But court documents revealed something strange. The lead witness against him also vanished, a midwife named Agnes Tether. She testified that Jonas kept arsenic in loose powder form, mixed with honey and glycerin, to avoid detection in liquids. 3 weeks after her testimony, she was reported drowned in the River Avon. No autopsy, no foul play claimed. And Jonas? Gone. Until now. Merrick knew Limehouse better than most. He'd buried a brother here. It didn't take long to find the building. A boarded-up alehouse named the Smiling Cask, shut since 1879. But locals whispered that someone lived beneath it, beneath the floorboards behind the coal chute. Inside, the dust was heavy and untouched, except for a small trail of prints. Merrick pried open a rusted hatch behind the hearth and descended into a narrow crawl space. There, in the darkness, he found a makeshift lab with glass vials labeled with numbers, not names. Burnt letters, half-read. One signed, "Yours, VG." A ledger. Inside the ledger were names, dates, symptoms, outcomes. He read aloud. May 7th, 1880, JG began tremors. June 9th, disoriented. June 20th, fatal dose administered via cocoa. No discovery. August 1881, EB. Removed early. Unreliable subject. Disposed. January 1882, VG. Subject compliant. Delayed response. Emotional involvement noted. Violet Gordon had been recorded like an experiment. Not a woman, not a soul, a test subject. Merrick leaned against the wall and vomited. Then he saw the trapdoor. It led deeper. The trail of Jonas Havelock wasn't just a list of the dead. There were women who had survived him. Barely. Merrick's search turned up 3 survivors. One, Amelia Bartram, maid 19 from Camden. She remembered Mr. Theo as kind, well-spoken. Gave her medicine for her nerves. It wasn't until she began coughing blood and lost most of her hair that she fled to a charity clinic. The doctor recognized the symptoms immediately. Sublethal arsenic poisoning. She recovered slowly, but refused to speak to anyone. Until now. His eyes, she told Merrick. They were kind. That's what made it worse. 2, Jane Fawcett, dressmaker, 28. She had been engaged to Thomas L., a traveling salesman. He had wooed her with tonics, brought her dinner every Sunday. She miscarried twice, each time after drinking his tea. By the 3rd month, she was vomiting bile and near death. A family doctor saved her, but her uterus was scarred. She'd never bear children again. "I dream of his hands," she whispered. "Not hurting me, just offering." That's the horror. I took it willingly. 3. Annalise Tether, midwife's niece. She revealed the missing piece. Her aunt, Agnes Tether, the woman who testified against Jonas in 1878, had kept a sample of one of Jonas's mixtures. She never trusted the verdict. She knew justice hadn't been served. And before her death, she hid the sample in a family Bible in her niece's attic. It was still there. The vial, carefully hidden behind psalms, was labeled Havelock Formula Number 3. Merrick brought it to a chemist at King's College. The analysis showed a deadly cocktail. Arsenic trioxide, antimony, potassium tartrate, laudanum opium, sugar syrup, a perfectly clear solution. Tasteless in tea, slow, cumulative, and lethal. Now they had proof. Enough to reopen the Violet Gordon case. Enough to name Jonas Havelock. But Jonas wasn't hiding anymore. He was baiting. On May 1st, 1882, a letter arrived at the Smiling Cask, nailed to the door. It was addressed to Detective Merrick. It read, "You walk through my memories like a child with a match, but some flames burn both ways. You think you found my ghosts. You haven't seen me yet. J." Inside the envelope was a lock of hair. Golden. Violets. Merrick knew Jonas wouldn't run. He enjoyed the game. So Merrick set bait. He leaked word of a 4th survivor and staged a false interview at the old Limehouse docks. He knew Jonas would come to see her face, but Jonas never came. Instead, a woman did. She introduced herself as Mrs. Abigail Latch, Jonas's sister, and she had something Merrick wasn't prepared for, a diary. The diary was not written like a madman scroll. It was clinical, structured, scientific. It revealed that Jonas's obsession began when his mother died from a misdiagnosed illness when he was 12. He believed she was weakened by love, poisoned by devotion to a violent man. He vowed to cure women's weakness by controlling it. He began experimenting on maids, courtesans, whore women, women who had no voice. He wrote, "If I dose them, I know what breaks. If I break them, I know what stays. Every death is a chapter in the anatomy of obedience." The final page chilled Merrick to his bones. Violet was different. She smiled after every sip. "I didn't want her to die, but science needs its conclusions." With the diary, the vial, and 3 survivors, Jonas Havelock was formally indicted in absentia for the murder of Violet Gordon and attempted murder of 3 others. A reward was issued. Posters went up, but Jonas Havelock was never found. Only rumors. One claimed he was seen in Marseille, offering tonics to widows. Another said he died of self-inflicted arsenic poisoning. A romantic death, some called it. But Merrick didn't believe it. Neither did Clara. She kept Violet's last letter under her pillow. The one Violet wrote but never sent. It read, "I'm not afraid to die, but I am afraid of being forgotten." The alehouse was sealed. The lab beneath it flooded. But locals say on quiet nights, you can still hear a man's voice whispering in the dark, offering tea. London, October 1882. The city had never seen anything like it. A trial without a body. No defendant. No formal arrest. Only evidence, fragments of horror, pages of madness, and the sobbing testimony of women who'd nearly died sipping sweet tea from the wrong hands. The Crown versus Jonas Havelock would become the first criminal proceeding in British history in which the accused was tried in absentia for serial murder, a manhunt that transformed into a ghost trial. The newspapers dubbed it the case of the vanishing chemist. It was held at the Old Bailey, the same courtroom that had seen the hangings of thieves, conspirators, and traitors. But never anything like this. Prosecutor Frederick Mallory, a rising star with a reputation for dramatic flair, addressed the packed courtroom. "We have no body, but we have a butcher. His weapon? Not a knife nor a gun. It was silence. It was trust. It was time. Arsenic, my lords and ladies, does not leave fingerprints, but it leaves ghosts, and today they speak." He turned toward the front row, where Clara Penrose and Eliza Harlow sat in black, holding Violet Gordon's last unsent letter. Clara was 13, but her gaze was unflinching. When Dr. Albert Dunstable, the doctor who had secretly examined Violet's body, was the Crown's first key witness. Calm, gray-haired, and articulate, he gave a chilling account of what Violet's insides revealed. Traces of arsenic in the liver, kidneys, nails, and lungs. Microscopic damage suggesting long-term exposure. A dosage consistent with deliberate graduated poisoning. He ended with one statement that silenced the court. She didn't just die. She was studied as she died. To Annalise Tether and the diary. Annalise brought the Bible-wrapped vial and her aunt's notes. Then she read aloud from Jonas Havelock's own diary, entered into evidence. There is beauty in slow death. No struggle. No bruises. Only acceptance. Violet's breath slowed like an obedient violin. Gasps echoed through the chamber. 3. The survivors. Each woman took the stand. Each described their own experience with Mr. Theo, Mr. Latch, or Mr. Lennox. They spoke of trust, then illness, then the dread realization that they were being killed by someone they believed loved them. Amelia Bartram collapsed mid-testimony. The court recessed for 2 hours. Jane Fawcett trembled as she showed a picture of her unborn child's grave. Because Jonas Havelock could not be found, the court appointed a public defender to argue theoretical innocence. Edgar Nash, reluctant and visibly disturbed by the role, tried to argue lack of physical witness placing Jonas at the scene. Arsenic was legally purchasable and found in many cosmetics and medicines. The diary could be a forgery, but the logic crumbled under the weight of consistency. Jonas's aliases, the exact chemical formula across all victims, the hair sample, the match between Violet's handwriting and her letter found in Jonas's lab. Even Nash seemed to give up by day 4. Just as the trial approached its climax, a discovery was made that shifted everything. A chimney sweep working in a burned-out Limehouse warehouse found a metal trunk buried beneath old coal sacks. Inside, a preserved set of women's gloves stained with bile, a silken ribbon embroidered with the initials VG, and most damning, a wax seal vial intact labeled Violet G final dose. Inside was the very formula that killed her, Havelock Formula Number 5, a perfected variant with microscopic silver flecks that could only be traced with advanced magnification. The vial became the smoking gun. The prosecution rested. On October 22, 1882, Jonas Havelock was found guilty of the murder of Violet Gordon and the attempted murder of Amelia Bartram, Jane Fawcett, and Annalise Tether. The judge, Lord Kershaw, made a historic statement. Though the man may live unshackled, he is imprisoned by the truth. May he walk the earth as a hunted soul until justice finds a shadow. A warrant was renewed. A lifelong sentence was declared. And yet, Jonas Havelock was still missing. 3 weeks later, a letter arrived at the home of Clara Penrose. No postmark, no return address. Inside, "You told my story well, little pen. Violet's eyes were always too bright. But you are fire. Be careful where you burn. J." Taped to the inside was a single crow feather dipped in arsenic dust. In the years following the trial, laws were changed. Arsenic could no longer be sold without registration. The Gordon Act of 1883 was passed, requiring postmortems for women who died under ambiguous or sudden degenerative conditions. A memorial to Violet Gordon was placed near Whitechapel with the words, She trusted. She taught. She warned. Detective Samuel Merrick retired a year later, but he never stopped carrying a small vial of sugar in his coat pocket, a reminder of how something so sweet could carry such cruelty. And as for Clara Penrose, she became a doctor, one of the first women licensed in London. Her specialty? Toxicology. In 1887, 5 years after the trial, a British sailor docked in Marseille told a strange tale. He claimed he met an Englishman in a portside tavern, one with a scar on his jaw, a soft voice, and a glass vial around his neck. The man offered him something to forget and poured a powder into his wine. The sailor said he didn't drink it, but when he woke up, the man was gone. The sailor's skin had begun to peel. Marseille, France, autumn, 1887. The city was a different beast from London. Where London brooded in fog, Marseille breathed in salt. The air buzzed with commerce, crime, and corruption. It was the kind of place where you could disappear into the crowd or resurface as someone else entirely. That's exactly what Jonas Havelock did. But in Marseille, he would meet a different kind of resistance. This time, he wouldn't just be followed. He'd be hunted. His name was Elliot Reed, 34, born in Liverpool, seasoned in rum and regret. He arrived in Marseille aboard the Red Monarch, a trade vessel carrying steel, opium, and secrets. One night, while drinking alone in the Routier district, Elliot was approached by a gentleman, well-dressed mid-40s, scar along his left jaw, carrying a silver-handled cane. He introduced himself as Dr. Thomas Lyle and offered a tonic for dreams. Elliot refused at first, but by the third drink, he accepted a spoonful of powder in his wine. It had no taste. Hours later, his vision blurred. His breath shortened. His gums began to ache. He stumbled to the docks and collapsed near the ship's surgeon, who recognized the signs immediately. He was arsenic poison, but only just. Elliot survived. His testimony became the first living international record of Jonas Havelock since his 1882 conviction in absentia, and British authorities took notice. A French inspector named Etienne Marchand, skeptical but curious, traced Havelock's trail. He learned that Dr. Lyle had departed Marseille and traveled east, through northern Italy and into Lugano, Switzerland. There, Marchand uncovered something horrifying. A private sanitarium, La Maison d'Ambers, had recently closed following a string of unexplained female deaths. 10 women, all diagnosed with hysterical insomnia, all treated by a visiting English consultant. All died within 6 to 8 weeks of arrival. Cause of death? Exhaustion. But Inspector Marchand gained access to the closed medical archives. He found syringe logs showing minute daily injections, patient records full of neurological degradation, one letter, unsent, tucked inside a book of French poetry. It read, "He tells me the dreams will stop soon, but I no longer sleep. I no longer eat. I feel my bones ringing. He smiles when I say I'm dizzy." Why does he smile? The letter was signed, Adelina G., February 1887. She was 19. Jonas Havelock had traveled under dozens of names, but his flaw was repetition. In Marseille, he was Dr. Lyle. In Lugano, he signed in as Dr. Theo Lennox, the same alias he used with Violet Gordon years earlier. That hotel registry, retrieved by Inspector Marchand, was sent to Dr. Clara Penrose in London, now 18 and working as a junior toxicologist at Guise Hospital. She recognized the name instantly. She took a leave of absence. She packed her bags, and she crossed the channel. Clara Penrose had waited 5 years for this. She had grown up with Violet's ghost in her lungs. Now she was in Marseille with a hand-drawn dossier of every Havelock alias, formula variant, and victim profile. She began where Jonas always began, the lonely and the sick. She visited hospices, healing parlors, women's rest homes. And slowly she began hearing his name again, not Jonas, but the Englishman with the soft pills. Dr. Lyle, the one who speaks of nerves and guilt. Monsieur Lenoir, the man who smells like silver powder. But the descriptions were always the same. Scar on his left jaw. Smelled faintly of violets or iron. Gentle tone. Precise shoes. Predator disguised as comfort. A week later, a letter arrived for Clara. It was from an Italian midwife named Francesca Andreotti, writing from Florence. She'd heard of Clara's search from a local priest and sent news of a pattern that matched the same timeline. 6 women dead, all from a recently closed rest clinic called La Covabianca, all previously treated by a visiting British sleep consultant. All reported vomiting, blurred vision, and joint stiffness before their deaths. Clara traveled to Florence immediately. There, she examined the exhumed bones of 2 of the women, still bearing microscopic deposits of arsenic in the growth plates of their femurs, indicating gradual, months-long exposure. This wasn't accidental. It was calculated. She returned to Marseille and passed her findings to Inspector Marchand. Then came the breakthrough. A Belgian crime journalist named Lucien Verreau wrote Clara directly. He claimed to have interviewed a man who met Havelock in Paris under his real name, not as Lyle or Lennox, but as Jonas Havelock. Havelock equals heart hook in French, a twisted wink at his real surname. Lucien had met Jonas in a cafe in Montmartre. He was interested in loneliness, Lucien wrote, said it was the most fertile soil for science. But Lucien had done more than talk. He had followed Jonas, and he had seen him enter a flat in the 6th arrondissement, an apartment with blacked-out windows, heavy curtains, and delivery boxes labeled medical glassware. Lucien sent Clara the address. On December 3, 1887, Clara Marchand and 4 local police officers raided the Montmartre apartment. Inside, a wooden desk with dozens of sealed envelopes, each addressed to fictitious patients. A wall covered in medical diagrams showing the nervous system under duress. A closet filled with women's gloves, many labeled by name and date. But Jonas was not there. He had left one day earlier. The only item on the table was a silver teaspoon, engraved on the handle, for Clara. May curiosity cure. Clara found one final thing, a hidden drawer in the desk. Inside, Jonas Havelock's new journal. It read like the continuation of a twisted scientific memoir. They sent a child to chase me. She has Violet's eyes. If she finds me, I will let her look, but only once. The game must end where it began, in silence. Beneath the final page was a map, northern Belgium, a red circle around a forest town called Namur, and the words, January 3rd, bring the truth, bring no one else. Clara Penrose was faced with the most agonizing choice of her life. Tell Marchand, risk Jonas fleeing, or go alone, risk her own life. She made her decision. She packed only what was necessary, a revolver, her sister's locket, Violet's final letter, and she boarded the train to Namur. Clara arrived in Namur on January 2nd, 1888. She waited. At dawn on January 3rd, she entered the woods alone. What she found there would haunt her forever. Jonas Havelock was waiting, in a black coat, a new scar across his neck, a silver vial in his hand, and beside him, a living woman, strapped to a chair, barely breathing, trembling. Clara stepped forward. Jonas smiled. This one's for you, doctor. You want justice? Prove it. Dose her, or she dies. He tossed her the vial and drew his own knife.